It's a sad but true fact that many of the things that we hear promoted on TV or the radio, and especially the internet these days, are communicated to benefit the source of the information financially. The motivation to make a profit will often create distortions in the truth and hide from view information that can be of benefit to the individual. Take, for example, the world of personal finance. You won't hear much discussion around the benefits of a long-term savings program that includes a steady accumulation of gold eagle coins, the purchase of U.S. savings bonds, or the paying down of a mortgage. Why? Simply because there's little financial incentive for anyone to promote them. There's much more money to be made in selling individual stocks, options, or high-premium numismatic coins to the public. The same financial biases are present everywhere, and they can obscure from view significant findings and research that can benefit us in all aspects of our life. Over the past 15 years, I've learned much about the role of gold in a sound savings plan, and I've put that knowledge into action and found it effective. I put together many videos to disseminate what I've learned, and at times I felt like I was a lone voice in the wilderness. Many of you have found the information I put together and have come to view wealth differently than what is typically promoted by the financial media. But as I said in my last video, there's so much more to life than finance. It's true that I studied financial wealth heavily over the past 15 years, but I also put significant energy into dissecting other facets of life. The workings of the human body have been of particular interest. I've found, unfortunately, that some of the most useful information on the human body is obscured by profit motive. For example, the role of nutrition takes a big back seat to drug research. Why? Well, there's much more money to be made through the sale of medicine than in simply telling people to change their food choices. The consequence of profit motive in human health has been nothing short of disastrous. Every year, we get sicker and sicker. Rates of cancer are on the rise. Children in their early teens are getting diabetes. Episodes of heart disease have never been more prevalent. Meanwhile, we spend more on medical treatment and medicines than ever before. Just as something is dreadfully wrong with our financial system, something is also dreadfully wrong with our healthcare system, or should I say our sick care system. After all, we have a system that focuses upon treating symptoms of disease rather than prevention of disease. Why? Profit. So in this video, I'd like to give you a quick glimpse into one of the most amazing things that I've learned about the human body, and that is its ability to heal itself, and one of the ways that you can help it to heal itself more effectively. My hope is that it will inspire you to do your own research and a little bit of personal experimentation. With that, let's get started. I'll bet that you have never heard about this study that was conducted at the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Virginia Medical School. It's a study of secretion patterns of human growth hormone. Human growth hormone is one of the most powerful and important hormones produced in the human body. It is produced in the pituitary gland and is responsible for regulating and promoting tissue growth and healing. It's known that the hormone is produced and released into the bloodstream in pulses as opposed to continuously, and it tends to be released mostly at night during sleep. This is one of the reasons why sleep is so important. Again, one of those facts that isn't strongly promoted by the healthcare industry. There isn't much profit in telling people to get more sleep, but I digress. What this study did was take it further. It took a look at the impact of food consumption patterns on the release of human growth hormone. And don't let the word fasting in the title put you off. This isn't going to be a new agey type of discussion. Let me explain to you what is meant by fasting. The body can be in one of two states, in a fed state or a fasted state. Your body typically stays in a fed state for several hours after a meal. During this time, your body is breaking down and absorbing nutrients from the food in your stomach and intestines. There are certain chemical changes that happen during this time, such as the elevation of insulin levels to regulate blood sugar and store excess energy as body fat. Once this process is finished, the body enters a fasted state. Simply stated, this is the period of time when the body is getting its energy primarily from its own fat stores. In Western society, we spend very little time in a fasted state. Think about it this way. It takes 4 to 5 hours for the body to complete a feeding cycle, and we eat every 4 to 5 hours or so. And then the only time that the body will be in a fasted state is when it's sleeping. And this is the primary reason why we call the first meal of the day breakfast, or break fast if you choose to include the pause in the word. So back to the research. The research studied the impact of being in a fasted state on human growth hormone. What they did was take several subjects and periodically sample their blood to measure levels of human growth hormone. They fed them normally for a day and sampled their blood every 20 minutes to form a baseline. Then they had them go without food, and they took blood samples every 20 minutes for the next 5 days. What they found was surprising. It did not take long for human growth hormone levels in the blood to increase by a full order of magnitude. That's a factor of 10 or more. The change seemed to happen as soon as the bodies entered into a fasted state, as soon as food digestion had been fully completed. The super high levels of human growth hormone persisted during the entire duration of the fast. Here's a snippet from the article. The authors show the results for all of the subjects, but I could only fit 3 on this graph. Nonetheless, you should be able to see the key point. For all of the subjects tested, the frequency and magnitude of human growth hormone secretion increased dramatically. The graphs on the left are the time series plots of growth hormone level in the blood during a normal day when 3 regular meals were consumed. The graphs on the middle and to the right are in the fasted state. Notice that there's not much difference between day 1 of the fast and day 5, but there is a dramatic difference between the fasted state and the baseline fed state. What the authors may have found is very profound. It may be the reason why growth hormone is primarily secreted during sleep. It may have more to do with the stomach being empty at night than the act of sleeping itself. This isn't to say that sleeping is not important. It certainly is. But what may have been overlooked for many, many years is the role of giving the body a longer break in between meals and the impact that it can have on tissue growth and regeneration. So what do we do with this information? Am I suggesting that people routinely fast for 5 days or more? No, I'm not. Some people do. But I don't think that it's necessary in order to get the bulk of the benefit from this information. Let's talk about a practical way to put this to work for you. And this is essentially what I do myself. Here's a typical eating pattern that we have in the West. The last food eaten during the day, unless the person is a late evening snacker, is dinner. The timing of dinner will be different for everyone, but let's assume for the sake of example that dinner is eaten at 8 p.m. It will take about 5 hours for the food to leave the stomach and for the body to enter into a fasted state. So let's call the beginning of the person's fasted state 1 a.m. If the person wakes and has a 7 a.m. breakfast, then this means that the person will be in a fasted state and producing the bulk of human growth hormone for the day in a fairly narrow 6-hour window. Most people eat every 4 to 5 hours, and so there will be no other significant window of being in a fasted state during the day. Now suppose that instead of adopting a typical eating pattern, you have a late evening dinner. Let's say you eat at 9 p.m. instead of 8. You go to bed and go into a fasted state at about 2 a.m. You wake up, shower, do whatever you need to do to prepare for your day, but decide to skip breakfast instead of eating. Instead of eating in the morning, you simply wait until 2 p.m. to eat your first meal of the day. Although most people would call this lunch, it's technically breakfast because you're breaking the fast. So you're essentially in a fasted state from 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is a 12-hour block of time over which you're in a fasted state and producing super high levels of human growth hormone instead of the 6-hour window that people usually get. The consequence? Well, you've essentially doubled the amount of naturally occurring human growth hormone in your system. You've also essentially doubled the window of time in which your body is metabolizing its own fat for energy, which has obvious other benefits. Does it cause discomfort? Well, at first it might. Most people aren't used to the feeling of having an empty stomach. Many will mistake it for hunger, but it's really not hunger, it's just an empty stomach. Once you get used to that feeling, it feels very natural and there's no discomfort at all. Then there's the psychological signals that people tend to get because mealtime is a habit. People tend to eat at certain times of the day, whether they have an appetite or not. Sometimes appetite can be triggered because psychologically people are trained to eat at a certain time of the day. In any event, this is something that I've been doing for quite some time, and I can tell you that I've experienced some pretty dramatic changes in my own physical health. I've always been in pretty good shape, but now, even in my mid-40s, I'm fitter than ever. I don't seem to get sick anymore. I heal very quickly, and my body is lean and trim with good muscle tone and definition. In addition, I found that I'm more alert in the mornings than I used to be, and as an added bonus, I save about 20 minutes each morning by simply not having breakfast as part of my routine. Now, this won't be for everyone. It's just what I've found to be effective for myself. There are other approaches that work just as well that others have adopted. I'd encourage you to try some personal experimentation and see what works best for you. By the way, the human growth hormone effect is not the only effect at work when your body is in a fasted state. There is also a biological phenomena called autophagy at work. Most people aren't familiar with autophagy. It's basically a state where special cells in the body called lysosomes are active. These special cells basically metabolize dead and diseased tissue in the body for energy at the same time that fat is being metabolized. In other words, they are hard at work when the body is in a fasted state and not in a fed state, and they're there to basically clean the body up of all its dead and damaged tissues. From a biological standpoint, it makes good sense that the body does this. When the body is metabolizing fat for energy, why not also break down cysts, tumors, and other dead cells for energy? Our bodies truly are amazing when you think about it. Here's just one of many scientific studies that are available if you'd like to research the topic. It originated from the Department of Immunology and Microbial Science at the Scripps Research Center. It primarily focused on the principle of autophagy in the brain, but went into depth in terms of the activation of autophagic cells in the liver. You can find a copy of this article posted for free. And here is one of the main exhibits from the study. It shows cross-sections of the livers of several lab mice. The top two rows are mice that were in a fed state. The bottom two are from mice in a fasted state. As can be seen, there are some dramatic differences in the autophagic cell counts between the top two rows and the bottom. The body produces and mobilizes autophagic cells for the metabolism of unhealthy tissues when it's in a fasted state. And this is also primarily when the body goes into a healing mode. Quite frankly, I've only touched the surface in this video on the amazing processes that are at work in the human body when you simply give it a short break from food. Human growth hormone increases by an order of magnitude in a fasted state to promote the growth of healthy tissue. This helps the body to heal and become stronger. Simultaneously, the lysosomes in the body are activated to consume unhealthy and dead tissue in the process called autophagy. So as your body is building new and healthy tissue, it's also getting rid of dead and diseased tissue. It really is an amazing process that I'd encourage everyone to study when you have some time. I personally think that this information is more important than any financial guidance that I've given you in the past. The body is a miracle in action. It can heal itself quite effectively. The key is that you just have to give it a little bit of a break from food once in a while. We tend to be an overfed society in the West, and I believe that this is partially responsible for our health problems. I doubt that this type of information will ever go mainstream, though. After all, there's not nearly as much profit for large companies to tell people to simply skip breakfast. There's much more money to be made in pills and supplements. But don't take my word for it. Do a little research. Do a personal experiment. You'll probably be happy that you did. And if it doesn't work, well, you've lost nothing.